Hi, my voice is rapidly disappearing, so I'm a sick Tristan. That's my Peter Coffin joke. So I was running my stream yesterday, as I do every Thursday in the hour before a new Step Back video comes out, and I got a request from the girl that you done know, who I do know on the internet, I guess. Anyways, she asked for a rundown of the impending Third World War coming with what's going on in Syria, and I thought, hey, this is a good thing to do for a 20-minute rant that I did during the stream, and now a quick step video. So, as the title says, this is your step back guide to the Syrian Civil War. So let's go back, really far back, and talk about the roots of why Syria is having so much tension and conflict. There's a few things, but the first one we should probably start with is the Sykes-Picot Agreement. The Sykes-Picot Agreement was a agreement made by the French and English a little over 100 years ago, deciding how to break up the Ottoman territory in the Middle East when it became pretty clear that after World War I there wasn't going to be an Ottoman Empire. With no local people present and without any thought towards the people living there, they drew a line in the sand, literally, and said that this side would belong to France and this side would belong to Britain. And that's literally how the border between Syria and Iraq was drawn. Of course, both Iraq and Syria are countries that have a long history of colonization, but also are countries that have huge amounts of diversity in language, religion, ethnic groups, and one thing that we don't quite get here in the West as much, which are tribal affiliations. Think of them as like extended community family type groups. This extremely tone-deaf drawing of the Middle Eastern borders also basically carved up a region called Kurdistan, a region that has its own language, its own people, and its own identity. So now Kurdistani people live in Anatolia, or the Asian part of Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So they're an ethnic minority in all these countries without a place to call their own. So there's been Kurdistani movements to try and get independence in all of those countries, and they have received different levels of backlash, violence, and oppression. Wonderful. And Syria is in the center of a geopolitical minefield. Syria, for many decades now, has been a Russian ally, going as far back even as the Soviet Union. Turkey, having a Kurdish minority in their country, has a distinct interest in making sure that there's never a Kurdistani state made. And also, the leader of the Shia religious world and the Sunni religious world, Iran and Saudi Arabia, have been in a sort of Cold War in the Middle East for decades. And for those who were checked out or don't remember, that the Syrian Civil War began as part of the Arab Spring, which was a movement of protests that happened all over the Middle East in response to various issues that came up, various issues that they had with their government. For example, the stuff that happened in Tahrir Square in Egypt and all of the instability that's been happening in Egypt is a result of the Arab Spring. The civil war that happened in Libya that resulted in the deposing and killing of Muammar Gaddafi, that was part of the Arab Spring. And also, there have been a few success stories, like in Tunisia, where there has actually been some significant government reforms as a result of the Arab Spring uprisings. There is also a vacuum of power in the borderlands between Iraq and Syria because of the US invasion of Iraq. The government of Iraq had trouble maintaining its hegemony in the region, and so in that desolate northern part of Iraq, there actually was not a lot of authority, and there was groups like ISIS starting to operate. And so the Syrian Civil War is actually like a four-way war that's going on right now. The first faction is the Syrian government, which is run by Bashar al-Assad, the dictator of Syria before the war broke out. And he's gotten a few allies. He's gotten Russia behind his back because of the historical ties between the Syrian government and Russia. He's got Iran by his side because of a need to check the powers of the Sunni parts of the Middle East. And because of the Shia support that he's getting from the Iranian government, Hezbollah, which is a militant group and political party based out of Lebanon, is also giving aid to the Assad regime. You then have the opposition, One of the major groups that is the opponents of the Syrian government is something called the Syrian Free Army, which was made by a group of Assad's generals who broke rank and split off from the military during the uprising of the Arab Spring and kind of started the civil war in the first place. This group is helped by Turkey, it's helped a little clandestinely by al-Qaeda, and more or less has support of the United States. Or at least it had support from the United States under Obama. It's getting rolled back now, and on top of that, the United States has some trouble getting involved because with Iraq and Afghanistan, they're a little tied down, and Obama, not wanting to repeat the mistakes of George W. Bush, decided not to actually get physically involved. But he's been, dropping money and the occasional bomb here and there, especially to defeat the next faction, which is the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or known mostly to the world as ISIS. ISIS began as an offshoot of al-Qaeda in Iraq and was part of the insurgency against the US invasion. They didn't exist before the US invasion, but the US invaded because they said al-Qaeda was in Iraq, in which they didn't show up until after the invasion. George Bush was a bad president, okay? So al-Qaeda in Iraq split off from al-Qaeda proper and became the Islamic State of Iraq, or ISI as it was called. When the Syrian Civil War broke out, they moved into the more rural regions of Syria and became the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, which was pretty large, but it usually followed just a few highways that were in the region and never had any support from any organizations outside of it. In fact, a lot of attention was put on the Islamic State, and so the might of pretty much the whole world was thrown at trying to make sure that ISIS was defeated, which they mostly have been now. They only have a few pockets left, and really their power structure is more or less gone. You then have Kurdistan, which opposes Assad, but is also trying to find a way to independence after Syria finishes this war. Sometimes this region is referred to as Rojava, or few other acronyms, and it's actually this extremely secular democratic society, kind of progressive, even has like women soldiers and things like that. There's even some experimentations with like radical democracy, like almost borderline like anarchist communes going on in that region. I've been asked a lot to do a video about it, but I haven't really found a way to do it historically. It could be a quick step though. And what has been the impact of this whole thing? There's been a massive refugee crisis with millions of people displaced internally and also millions displaced externally. About 3 million Syrian refugees are exported around the world trying to find a place where they can hang their hat and not have bombs dropped on them. And that has, of course, resulted in right-wing groups in Europe and North America trying to clamp down on trying to help these desperate people escaping warfare. Because, we didn't learn our lesson during the Holocaust, and we're definitely not interested in learning it again. And then I just found out that like 41% of Americans don't even know what Auschwitz was, so I kind of get now why the anti-Syrian refugee radical right is happening. And I think 41% is about where Trump's support is at. It's my thinking person emoji. So why is everyone talking now? It's going into its 8th year. Why is it in the news? Why are people talking about World War III? And it has to do with a gas attack that happened a few days ago. Essentially, it looks like chlorine gas was used as a weapon in Douma, which is a sort of suburb of Damascus, the capital of Syria. A lot of the world has rushed to condemn Bashar al-Assad for this attack, including Donald Trump, who does not shy away that he loves using violence to solve his problems. There's some problems, though. Given that Assad's actually on the upstep in this war, and he knows the geopolitical ramifications of doing a gas attack, it doesn't make a ton of strategic sense why Assad would use these weapons. I mean, there's always the fact that he is a brutal dictator and will do whatever it feels he needs to without thinking through the strategic ramifications is always an option. He could just be a megalomaniacal crazy person. But given that the world has very low tolerance of these kinds of chemical weapons attacks, it feels like if he had any intelligence whatsoever, he would not do it. You know who would? People who oppose Assad. They have a large interest being on the backstep of trying to do something drastic in order to coax international powers to get involved in the war in a bigger way. What they would really want is the United States to get involved fighting Assad. And judging how the liberal centrists are already having a wargasm over the possibility of killing more brown people, this has already gone into order. There's already people saying that Donald Trump is acting more presidential by threatening to destroy the world. Trump is also an idiot and is surrounded by vicious, bloodthirsty monsters like Mike Pompeo. And there's trouble because this is a proxy war, and if the US got involved in a direct way, you would be coaxing Russia to get involved, and the United States and Russia both have giant stockpiles of nuclear weapons, which could be apocalyptic if used. And unfortunately, one of those two countries has a leader who's not smart enough to realize that. By the way, it's not Putin. There's also conflicting alliances. Turkey recently invaded the part of Kurdistan, the part that's fighting Syria. And Turkey is a US ally. And if the US got involved, they would probably go with their default ally, which is actually Kurdistan. And then the United States would find itself fighting against Turkey, which is another really bad idea, especially because Turkey is a member of NATO, the military alliance that the United States is basically the leader of. So yeah, that would be an extremely bad idea, but Trump is president, so you never know. Now, this news will make us all feel very terrible because it's an ongoing tragedy that every single day reminds us that this is one of the darkest chapters in human history going on in Syria. There's a humanitarian crisis, and if you want to do anything about it, what you should be doing is helping to either help find a home or fund finding a home, or lobbying politicians to not block their borders to the refugees who are trying to escape this war region. Don't think about the war as a center for geopolitical forces. Think about the people who live there and what their experience is right now, and help any way you can. International powers, if I had any say with them, I would suggest to not focus on trying to end the war one way or the other. That's not going to solve a whole lot. Really, what you need to do is find a way to make sure that those who are being caught in this violence have a way to get out and escape. Safe zones, getting civilians and refugees out of the war zone, things like that. In the long term, this conflict would best be resolved if it wound up with the breakup of Syria. Like Yugoslavia and Iraq, Syria is a country that has a lot of countries inside. It would probably be best for the people living inside if it was several countries and not just one being held together by a strongman dictator. I mean, breaking up Iraq and Syria at the same time to make several states that would actually align with the people who live there would be the best option. But if we can just get Syria, that would be at least a step in the right direction. And for Christ's sakes, can we just let Kurdistan exist? They obviously want to, and nobody seems to be interested in helping them out with that. So that was a lot, so be sure to call me a beta cuck down in the comments or whatever it is you want to do. If you want to help the channel, you could share with your friends, or you could subscribe if you want to watch more. One thing for a few of you out there, if you feel like you want to keep Step Back running and help me move towards making this a full-time endeavor that can sustain itself, you can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory and pledge as little as $1 a month. You get videos early. My patrons probably saw this 3 days before it came out. And there's also a lot of perks that you can sign up for. So please go and check it out. And as little as $1 a month helps me towards doing cooler things and making more of my time available to do Step Back stuff. I'm also $2 a month away from the next stretch goal, which would be a video about the eugenics movement, which will hopefully not be demonetized, but it is YouTube. Anyways, you guys have a good week. I'll see y'all on Thursday. Peace. And I really mean it. I really wish more people did.